Rangers Journal.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night's edition of the Rangers Journal. This is your Q&A show for this week, and my name is Chris, and I will be your host this evening. And what a panel we have lined up for you this evening. We've got an absolute treat for you. Mitch is not here yet. He will be here soon, though, so just enjoy it while he's not here, if he can, ladies and gentlemen. But Stevie and Billy, Jay, thank you for joining us tonight. Stevie, how are you, mate? You doing well?
Chris, Billy, good evening. Thanks. Yeah, we're enduring this international break, but we'll get through it together, lads. Stay strong.
Absolutely, 100%. Billy, how are you? You doing well, mate?
Good, love that new intro. That has me ready to go and pull my boots on again, and my knees wouldn't take it. As a great intro there saying, what a panel we have for you tonight. Mitch isn't on it.
He's going to kill me for that one, Billy, when he turns up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining. Some of the comments, we've seen some comments are already there, so thank you. We'll get your comments up in just a few seconds. As I said, Mitch, the one and only, will be joining us very shortly. We'll see him at some point in the next 5-10 minutes or so. This is your show tonight, guys. This is the show for you to ask us questions. We're not like mainstream. We don't avoid any questions. We will answer as much as we can. We will talk through any topic he's wanting to talk about Rangers, and we'll see what we can come up with within the next 60 minutes or so. It's been a quiet week, all things considered. We've had 3 league wins on the bounce, and a strange week not having Rangers, especially with so many games back to back. Few things we could probably use to get us kicked off this week. I'll just cover some headlines. Danny Rowe met his staff at Ibrox earlier on this week. Rangers released some pictures around that, and it looks as if it was a good meeting. Willie Collum sides with VAR. Again, we're hearing he's double downing on that one, which is to be expected, you would imagine. Patrick Stewart, we hear he's got a new job. Unfortunately for some. It's not away from Rangers. It's he's been appointed to the Legal and Regulatory Working Group of the European Football Club. So sorry to disappoint anyone there with that one. And the other one probably to cover off is Rangers are still on the hunt for a Scottish member of their backroom staff, which we are hopeful we will hear very shortly on. Maybe some news coming out next few days. That was the timeline that was given from Rangers. So hopefully that is something that will come up very shortly. So as I said, guys, it's been a quiet week. Stevie, how have you been feeling this week with no Rangers and nothing to really focus on from that perspective? How's it been for you, mate?
Bleak. November, full of rain, no Rangers, but no, hi Mitch. This is the earliest you've been late in a long time, mate. Well done.
Thanks very much, mate. Out my fans.
I feel like the last international break, I couldn't wait for it to come quick enough, because obviously we had Terry Vegetables in charge, and it was just a nightmare. You're kind of glad to see the back of the domestic season and domestic fixtures, but like you said, 3 league wins in the bounce. You can see a real change coming for Danny Rowe. He's made a big difference in a very short space of time. So there's 2 ways, you can look at it, keep that momentum going, but also he's now got 2 solid weeks to work with the guys that are still there. So it might be a kind of well-timed break. We try and coach Chermiti to score a few goals, be a bit of a striker, but I think he's a miracle worker. But yeah, obviously missing it, but at the same time I'm kind of hopeful. The fact that he's done so much good work in a short time with so many games coming thick and fast, if he's got 2 solid weeks in the training pitch, hopefully he can really kick them on again further, and when they come back next weekend we see an even bigger improvement. That's my hope, see that progression again.
Absolutely, Stevie. Mitch, welcome. Faster than late as always, but it's great to have you on board. I gave you the big intro at the start, mate. So
what a guy!
So hopefully you can match up to the standards of Stevie and Billy as we progress on through tonight. But we'll see what the guys have got in the comments for us and what sort of questions we've got. Billy, from your perspective, again, I think we spoke about this. A few spoke about it in different pods. Has this international break came at a good time for you, or has it came at the wrong time? What's your thoughts on that one, Bill? You're on mute, Billy.
You're on mute, mate.
It's a bit of a weird one, actually, because really this season a lot of us have gradually just got sort of disenfranchised with the whole season and thought that is basically gone before it started. And we've got the 3 games in a row, which has had this sort of weird sort of thing where, okay, Hearts are starting to drop points, and you look at that Celtic side, and they're only 5 points ahead, which, given what an absolute bin fire we've been in terms of Russell Martin kind of, just what he did and how he damaged the squad and the job that Danny Rowell's got. So it's kind of weird. This break's allowed me to recalibrate a bit, from a season that I was really starting to say, well, I've paid my RTV subscription, so I'll be watching the games, but it's difficult to get too excited. Now you're kind of going, well, there is a chance, if we've been this bad and we're only 5 points behind that Celtic side, then if we get better, could we nibble into that? My fear with Danny Rowell is we've done maybe, I don't, this is going to sound harsh, but to me, Danny Rowell, if I was trying to symbolise him as a manager, he's a scratch card. He's got maybe 40 or 50 games. I don't think he's got the experience to handle everything that's going to come at him at Rangers, but we've scratched the first panel and they've gone, hey, look, you've got a shiny new manager. You might win £250,000. We've scratched the second panel and he's starting to improve a team that should have improvement in it. My fear is when we scratch the third panel, do we actually have a manager that's capable of winning things? We might do. We might have bought a lucky ticket, but for me, a manager with 40, 50 games experience is going to be up against it. And my fear is, if we wanted the Danny Rowell to be successful, put him in at the start of the season, let him do the recruitment, don't throw him in to try and sort of put out a bin fire and deprogram a side and get momentum. So reasons to be hopeful, but I've also got reasons where I'm a bit not sure.
Still on the fence, Billy, with some things, I would imagine, which nobody can fault you for that. I think everyone's in the same boat. I think we're all treading on the exit moment, thinking, is this going to go one way or the other? So I completely understand where you're coming from, Billy. Mitch, come on, what have you got for us? You've come in late, you've done the big build-up, you need to give us a really good starting point for yourself tonight, mate. Are you excited about Rangers again? Tell me that.
Always, mate. Even through the highs, through the lows, we sign up for it all. The tears, the fears, the everything in between. That way. But I'm much like Stevie. I think that obviously those that aren't away in international duty have had a couple of days off, obviously, start of this week. And rightfully so. But I think a lot of us, myself included, forget just how much football that the team have played in the 3 weeks since Danny Rowell's came in. We've played 5 games or 6 games or something over the course of 3 weeks. It's an unnatural amount of football for a new manager to try and come in, bed in ideas. And I'll say that let's call it the opening quarter of his gambit, he's passed with flying colours, in my opinion. The 2 European games were, let's be honest, they were a knock in the park for him. They were a free hit. The thing that we all screamed for was, don't get us a showing up domestically. He's won every game in front of him and took Celtic to extra time, despite being a man down for the better part of 60 minutes at that point. There's only so much he can do at that point, in terms of from a coaching perspective, with the games coming as thick and fast as they did, and the amount of travel that came on top of that as well. In that 3-week period, we'd been to Norway. We've obviously played in Dundee. We've played obviously at home, but we've been moving around. We've been moving around an awful lot, and there's probably not been as much time in the training ground as Danny Rowell would have liked. So for those players, likes of Lyle Cameron, Cora Barron, the likes of them that aren't away on international duty right now, next week's a really good week to get stuck in with them. Get get the claws into them a wee bit and say, look, here's what I want from you to excel in the role that I see for you in this team. The international players, they'll go and play themselves into a bit of form, or they'll get that bit extra fitness and stuff like that while they're away. They'll take care of themselves.
Yeah.
But the young players that are still here as well as the players that just aren't in the international teams, it's a really good week. And players like, fair play to Sir Blue in the comments there, Big Dijon as well. If we can get an extra week of him in the grass and maybe see him, the weekend after next, not saying for the full game, Christ, I don't think Jesus has walked in there and started working miracles in the physio table, but if we see him for even 10, 15 minutes, that way, it continues that feel-good factor as we come back.
Yeah.
But
Mitch,
yes,
I think you make some great points, Mitch, and look, it's absolute spot on the money with them, and I see we've got some great comments coming in from people, so we'll hit the ground running with some of these comments and some of the questions. Before we do that, I just want to put a big shout out to our podcast sponsor, which is Bluebell. Bluebell is from Puerto del Carmen, Lanzarote. Thank you so much for your support, folks. We really appreciate it. If anyone's over in Lanzarote anytime soon, need a wee bit of sun in your life, then head over to the Bluebell's bar, and the guys over there will look after you. I just want to cover off, guys, a couple of questions, if we don't mind, that we've just seen coming up here, and we'll go through it. And I just want to say thanks to everyone for putting their comments on already. So, as Sir Blue said, first of all, Stevie, going to start with you. Big Sterling should be back soon, is one of the comments that have been made there. We also had another comment earlier on, which was, is there any truth Rangers being linked to a new centre-back? I'm not quite sure of that one. We'll need to come back to that one in a wee second, and we will cover it off. But Stevie, if I can start with yourself first of all in regards to Dujon Sterling. I was about to say Raheem Sterling there. That'd be a lucky chance, wouldn't it? Dujon Sterling, is he going to be a new signing for Rangers, do you think? Or are we maybe too scarred on the back of the injuries he's had previously and his non-consistency? What's your thoughts?
I mean, I think everybody hopes that he's past his injuries, but obviously for any long-term injury, you're going to pick up niggles. So it really is a case of almost just really slowly bring him back in. But the other boy they're mentioning, the link to a centre-back, to me, Sterling's the best centre-back we've got. Like, physically fit. When he's fit, he's got all the attributes to be a great centre-half. He's quick, he's brave, he can drive. I think he's an excellent defender, very versatile. But yes, really need to just watch what we're doing, because as you've pointed out, his track record is pretty dreadful since he signed. It's just the Rangers curse, isn't it? To come to Rangers and actually injured for the next 2.5 years. But maybe with Danny Rule and the new in the backroom staff, maybe they can kind of keep him properly fit and get him proper game time. But it's going to be half an hour here, 45 minutes there, and just see how he goes. And if there is a minor setback, don't be disheartened. It's likely to happen. It happens to most players. I think it's an ACL unit for, so yeah, that's pretty standard. But yeah, to me, he would be like a new signing, and very much needed, because he can play right across the back line. He can even play left back, which we need as well. So having that option just to take a bit of the pressure off Magomo would definitely be a benefit to the squad. And he's a leader. They always said he's in that leadership group. So yeah, I have a strong voice in the dressing room. I'd be delighted to see him back. But definitely a wee bit of patience there. But he's a cracking player to have back in the squad, absolutely.
Billy, just under a year, I think it is. He's been out for Dujon Sterling. Just as Stevie touched upon there, his versatility is going to be key for Danny Rule, I think, in terms of where he can play. Do you see the defensive? Just keeping on the defensive question and what some people have asked, do you see defensive position, whether it be centre back or anywhere across that back line? Do you see that being the priority for January, for Danny Rule and Kevin Thurwell at this moment?
I think the defence is a priority, because we've been shipping goals and looking like shipping goals for a lot of the season. And Dujon Sterling, just to briefly touch on it, he's at a critical point in his career. He's 26 and he's floated about at us for a couple of years now. And I'm not sure I'm quite as optimistic as Stevie would be. I think he looked great when he came in. He looked very promising, very physical. Like he could get about the park and fearless, and then seemed to suffer a wee bit from not really like having a position that was his. And prior to the injury, to be honest, I thought he'd gone off the boil. The last 10 or 15 games, he hadn't been pulling up any trees. Now, whether that's because the manager didn't have a plan for him or whether he was just losing his way, I don't know. But at 26, if he doesn't come in and make an impression in this Rangers side, and that's going to be tough, because coming into the second half of a season when you're already out to a long-term injury, he's not a guy that can just be planted back in and we put our hopes on him. Even if he does live up to expectations and hopes, you're going to have to bleed them in. It's going to have to be, 60 minutes and then maybe a couple of games and then rest them. So, yeah, I hope he's in, and I think he would improve the back four or back five. But I think we do need to sign, because I think John Souttar he's never lived up to the hopes we had for him. It looks pretty clear he's on his way. If he hasn't signed the deal by now, he looks like someone who's got an eye on the door. And to be honest, he's playing a wee bit like that, I think, as well. I don't think he's impressing. He looks like someone. If you're John Souttar with his injury history, you're looking at the second half of this season and thinking, if I can get a new deal signed with another club, I'm fixed for that's me set up for life. If I do like another Achilles or whatever it happens to be in the next 2 or 3 months, that could be my career over. So he's a human being. He's got to be playing within himself to some extent. Magoma needs cover. Tavernier is half the player he was before, because his engine's going, and he had his strengths and weaknesses when he was at his peak. And Derek Cornelius looks fine, but to be honest, I had my concerns about him when he came in, because he has played at decent level, but he's never made himself indispensable. He goes into a club, he's there for a year, they're happy to let him go, and I wonder if that's what's going to happen here. Problem is, in January, are you going to get significantly better players available? Because, good players are playing in their side, and players that are good enough to get into this side might want to play at a better level than come to Scotland in January. So I don't envy Darry Rule having to try and sort of square that circle. Fortunately, he has the magnificent team of Thelwell and Stewart to back him up. So it will all be fine, I'm sure, in January.
I love your optimism, Billy. That's absolutely
sarcasm.
Mitch, you were giving Billy the death stare there. I think when I think it was the name Cornelius. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was Cornelius is when that said. What's your take in the situation? Obviously, the question is around Sterling, around will he bring any benefit back to Rangers, and is he going to be a new player? But what's your overall summary, Mitch, of the defensive situation for Rangers just now?
Well, firstly, Billy, I don't know who hurt your feelings today, but come and tell me who it is. One phone call, I'll deal with it. Problem solved, mate. Anything for you. But I think the defence, accusing Souttar of playing within himself, I think is a really wild accusation to make to a player. Given the fact that, I'm not being funny, but Souttar will always be the ultimate siege defender. He's all thriller, no filler at the back. He's the man. You can shake your head all you like, Billy. You can shake it, but he's no thrills, no spills. I'm not saying I want him as my first choice centre back at the club, but is there better centre backs out there? Absolutely. But for right now, where this team is at, he's the player that he needs to be right now for us. But it's also down to the players beside them to pull their fingers out and start playing to the level that they can play to. Put the pressure. If you look at Magoma, for example, Magoma is, rumour has it, Cornelius came to us nursing a wee bit of a niggle with the calf, and I think as well that last game there against Dundee, we've seen it. I think he played where he probably shouldn't have played, with the way that he broke down towards the end. I think that's been maybe an ongoing niggle for maybe a couple of weeks. It's maybe finally reared a bit of an ugly head. But I don't think it's anything too serious. Maybe the international break's perfect for him to go and get a rest for a couple of weeks. I think Cornelius, you see him when he's on the ball, he's a different cut above the rest of the defence. He's calm, he's composed, he's physical, he puts his tackles in, he wins his duels. He does everything that you want a defender to go and do. And when you start to look at the fact that there's an option to purchase him for, I think the fees are about up to £3 million or something that's been floated about. Send John Souttar on his merry way and say, thank you very much for your service, John. You've been a great servant. Your wages are off to Derek. And that's fine. Oh, look at I've worked Stevie. I've worked Stevie by sending Souttar away. I'm sending him off to Alcatraz, mate. But I think, genuinely, though, you replace him with Cornelius. Cornelius is a better, more composed defender. But the problem is, it's the underbelly. Because Enciala's not had a sniff this season, despite the fact that he's been ready, willing, and we've seen last season he's able against most of the domestic teams. I'm not saying I particularly want to see him against Celtic or anything like that, but could he have played minutes against Dundee at the weekend there? He absolutely could have and should have. played minutes against Dundee. But the left back situation needs to be addressed because right now we've got a child at left back, who's barely had his first shave, and that's not sustainable over the course of a 60-game season. Right now, we will do a Magoma, what we have done to young players before him, where we will burn his legs out by the time he's 23 if he was one of ours. Because we'll overplay him week in, week out, the same way that we've done to Tav, which is why Tav's legs are short. We've relied on a man to play over 50 games a season for the last 6 seasons in a row now. Nobody can do that. But the underbelly of the centre-back is a problem for me. And I think Stevie touched on it. Sterling, for me, hands down, is the best pound-for-pound defender that we've got in the team. But the question mark will always be over, can we keep him fit? Because if you keep him fit, he's a world beater in his day. If you can't keep him fit, he's an expensive luxury to have. And we've got rid of other expensive luxuries because for the exact same reasons. Tom Lawrence in his day was a cracking player. He's a match winner if you bring him off the bench at the right time. But at 25 grand a week or whatever he was on, that's an expensive luxury to have.
Yeah.
So I think...
just jump in there, sorry.
Go on, mate. Come on.
Just on Sterling, I think he's the only contracted defender next season. Everybody else is out of contract or on loan. Like first teamer anyway. That's a worry.
Fernandez, I know we've got a wee chuckle with Fernandez, but I think it's Fernandez and Enciala are the only other 2 contracted defenders.
And there's more chance of you and me playing centre back for Rangers and those two. To be fair.
I'm a short ass, mate. I can still win a header, but I'll bite your ankles doing it.
And that's probably what we need at the moment, Mitch. We're getting up to who's doing that just now in the defence. That's the problem we've got. Look, I think defensively, it's something we could sit here and have a whole podcast on, I think, if I'm being honest, gents. So, loads of questions coming in. I want to maybe just switch the attention a little bit, just the middle to the front of the park. Cover a couple of things off. I'm going to do this individually just so we can get through all the questions, guys. Steve, I'm going to come to you first, then Billy another one, then Mitch another one, right? But this is all about the middle of the park. Steve, we'll start with yourself. We've got snipers asking the question, are we seeing now why Moore is keeping Curtis out of the team? Obviously, Mikey Moore had a fantastic game on Sunday, and he played really well midweek before that. He had a really good game against Hibs, and against Celtic he was okay as well. I think Mikey Moore has started to get better week on week, but is it a direct he's in and Curtis is not? Because Moore can move in different positions, whereas Curtis we've only really seen in 1 or 2 positions this season. What's your overall feeling on the situation with Mikey Moore and Curtis? Is it as simple as he's keeping out the team, or do you think there's something else behind it?
No, I think that's basically it in a nutshell. I mean, I was banging the Finlay Curtis drum for like months. I really wanted to see him in the team because he was producing. Every time he seemed to come on, he would score, he would assist. And at that time, Moore was doing nothing. Whereas now he's actually starting to produce. He's getting goals, he's getting assists. So fair play. He deserves to be in the team on merit because he's actually delivering. But that's my only slight concern with Daniel was the fact that Lyle Cameron and Curtis aren't really getting any minutes at all. I'm really happy with everything that he's done so far. I'm impressed, but those 2 young Scottish guys, I really want to see them get more minutes, especially the fact that they provide goals. Strikers aren't doing it. We can't rely on the top guys at the top to score goals just now. So really, the goals have to come from somewhere else. And to me, both those guys, they've proven that they've already done it in the Premiership in Scotland. So yeah, I'd like to see them get more time because, like I say, they are a proven, element that we can use. They can score goals, they can assist. So I really want to see them in the team, and maybe in these 2 weeks working with them more closely, they'll build up a better relationship, and then they can be in the team because Moore's still only 18-year-old. He can't play every week. Same with Magoma at left back. Can't expect him to play every week, and if they do, they're going to be very inconsistent. So it's using your what's at your disposal, and I think those 2 guys have got to be in the Rangers team, or not like starting, but getting minutes at least for the bench and really building that up because, like I say, they can make a big contribution. It's a big season, a long season. So yeah, I want to see them doing that.
The worry is, Stevie, as well, that if these 2 type of players can't get into this Rangers squad, and let's be honest, we've all been very critical of the squad, then will they ever make it in the squad is my question. And I think that's why we need to see them. We need to see something from them over the next few games. And maybe Danny's just want to try and get the wins under the belt first, then start to maybe put an identity, and maybe that's his philosophy behind it. But hopefully,
it might make a difference when we get the Scottish coaching. You might see that, the Scottish players starting to get a bit more involved. Hopefully, that's my hope anyway.
Absolutely. Billy, staying with middle to front of the park, Dado's Blue Boots is saying, feel sorry for Bayrami, never got a decent run in the team. I think a few people spoke this on podcasts over the last couple of weeks, and one of the names we said was, why is Bayrami not getting in? He was there on Sunday on the bench, but never looked as if he was going to come off the bench. Is that a race that's now been run and he's probably looking elsewhere? I think there's been comments in the papers this week. He's been frustrated, which you can't obviously fault the boy for being that way, but is that maybe something that's let's part ways in January, see if we can recruit from the fee, or do you think he's got something that could probably provide to Rangers between now and the end of the season?
Well, before answering that, I'll just dot back to Mitch, who not someone who bears a grudge or anything, but if you're going to attach the label "no thrills and no spills" to John Souttar, no spills. I don't know what John Souttar you've been watching, maybe Harry Souttar, because I can think of quite a few spills associated with John Souttar, and I'll leave it at that. On Bayrami, he's a bit of a curio. What I would say is a little bit like going back to what we were saying about Finlay Curtis and Lyle Cameron. I think there's an argument for saying players aren't getting their chance. And I think that argument becomes less convincing when subsequent managers come in and they still don't get their chance. Because every time a new manager comes in, there's a refresh, there's a reboot. Players know that they have a chance to up their game and get in the team. And for whatever reason, Finlay Curtis, he does get goals. But is he impacting the game in the way that your Mikey Moore hasn't? He's only got maybe one goal so far, one or two, but you can see him impacting the game. You can see him grabbing the game. Finlay Curtis, for whatever reason, okay, Russell Martin, you kind of would give anyone a pass after failing under Russell Martin because like the manager was the failure there. But the fact that Danny Rose come in, he's still not getting in. He's seeing in training what he's seeing in training. He's got no preconceptions. He's looking at the players that are best and he's putting the best players in the pitch. So I do wonder if there's an element of maybe there's something a wee bit missing, maybe the off-the-ball work that seems to be an issue with youth players that come through at Rangers. Bayrami, he's an odd one. I can't help but think a guy who, you plant on Callum McGregor in a couple of Old Firm games and he just does a really disciplined, tactical job. And we know that he's got a bit of attacking flair as well. Just seems like in this current Rangers setup that at least he should be a squad player able to contribute something. Would I be right in saying he's not in the Euro squad? Yeah, that surprised me. That did. I mean, again, Russell Martin decisions, but he seemed like a guy who, even if he's not playing every week, even if he's not sort of like being used in an attacking sense, he still seemed like someone who could play a disciplined role, can obviously take instruction and do a job. I don't think he produces regularly. When you see what he can do, I think he's one of those players that comes to Rangers because he can produce moments of really good football. And if he did it more regularly, he'd probably be in Serie A, La Liga, or staying somewhere like that. So I think he's with us for that reason. But I'm surprised he's not getting used a bit more because I think he does offer a bit going forward. He's an experienced pro, so you think he would have something to offer the younger players. And we've seen that he's not someone that spits a dummy out when he's put into a high octane match like an Old Firm game, and he's asked to do the classic thing of fire in the belly, ice in the veins, and actually a disciplined job. He can do it. So personally, I'm surprised he's not featuring a wee bit more. If you're Bayrami, you hear his. I think his international manager was talking this week saying that basically doing the kind of thing that we start to hear when players aren't getting game time and suggesting that. He's an important player for his national team. He'll continue to be an important player for them, but maybe he needs to start getting game time. And that's signalling to Bayrami, it's signalling to Rangers that if he wants to be featuring, then maybe January's the time. If he's not forced his way into the team on a semi-regular basis by January, that he maybe wants to have a look. And I wouldn't blame him because he's good enough to be playing first team at a reasonable level for someone, and it's a pity he's not featuring a bit more for us, to be honest.
Billy, I'm in agreement with you. Bayrami's somebody for me who I've always thought we need to get more from. If I'm being honest, I would like to have seen more. I think he played in a couple of games against Celtic where one of the games he marks Callum McGregor out the game, and the other game he scored. I think it was the League Cup. Was it the League Cup final or the one we lost in penalties on? Can't remember exactly what one it was, but he played really well in that game as well under Clement. And I thought, this is a player. There's a player in there somewhere. He's one that I think you can see differences on, but it's just a shame. It is a real shame that he's not getting anything. Somebody mentioned a comment there about did we see the Albanian manager's comments? I'll be honest, I've not seen the Albanian manager's comments. I'm going to put it out to the panel. Does anyone know what the comments were around? Bajrami, was it around knocking in the squad and things? Is that what it was?
The comments were along the lines of he's been an important player for the national team for the last 2 seasons. And he's not happy, and the national manager's also not happy with his situation at Rangers, which I'm not going to lie, Stevie's been on many a pod in the past with me where I will always say, Baj is my boy. Like, he is a player who, yes, he can be lazy, yes, he can frustrate the life out of you, but he's a player that can change a game in the flick of a heartbeat. And we've seen flashes of it. But if you're going to flip it back and I'm going to throw a question out to Chris, because Chris was on his Bajrami train there. If you're Bajrami and the previous managers left you out the squad for the Euros, so that's already signalled where the manager sees you, basically. But then you've also barely played for the team as well. You know, you've only played against Alaba realistically, and maybe a couple of handful of appearances here and there. In those minutes, you've also played well when you've contributed. What more can you do?
It's a great question.
Sorry. Yeah.
Great question. I think he needs to go well. See, for me, Mitch, if I was him and you're in that situation, you'd be shouting, you've got to go and loan somewhere in January to try and get minutes. You would need to try something different. Is he going to get that time at Rangers? I think that's the problem. I don't know if he'll get it.
But see,
I think he's really talented. I know there's a question, is a player in there? But to me, he's the type of guy that really needs, 10, 12 games consecutively. He really needs to keep playing to get his engine going, because he just, using him here and there, it just doesn't work. He's not that type of player. People are saying he's lazy, but I've been at games and I've seen him. I don't know. He looks like he puts a shift in. But do you know,
I think as well,
he scored. Sorry, I was going to say he's a top scorer at the national team the last 2 years. We'll get a fee for him. You know, he's a guy we could actually get a bit of money for, so that can be reinvested.
I think as well, he's one of these. I think he's a bit of a feelings player, and it's going to sound stupid, to use that term in this day and age. But I think he's a player that if he feels loved where he is, you see the best out of him. And right now, I'm not being funny, but he's treated like the third child that was adopted 4 times over in the family that nobody really wants at the moment, because he barely got a sniff under Barry. Terry Vegetables as well. Terry Vegetables. Danny Röhl. It's hard to judge Danny Röhl's opinion on him right now, because I think Danny's tried to play the players that were going to play in the European ties with how the games have came. And the problem being is he's had to keep them fit, probably at the expense of others that he knows fine well aren't ready or can't play in the Europa League games. I think the opening probably 2 or 3 games back post-break gives us a clear idea of who Danny Röhl sees as part of his long-term team and who he sees potentially making an exit in January.
Yeah, absolutely. Mitch, if I can just stick with yourself on this final one that we've got in the middle.
Then, I'll indulge you.
The question from Blue is, what is the view on Asgard? Do you think he will ever be an asset on the park? Mitch, let's take your point on that first, and then I'll hand it back over to Stevie and Billy just after, just to add anything on. But I think Asgard's been one of the talking points this season in terms of he went away with Norway, he had a good few games with Norway, he's put performances in, he's maybe had 1 game from me that's been okay. The rest, I don't think he's been anywhere near the standard of what you would expect from a Rangers player at the moment. But again, not a lot of them have been, so I can't be too critical on him. But as Blue is asking, what do you think about Asgard, and do you think he'll be an asset on the park?
Yes, he will be. Asgard, I think, will go on to be a really, really top player for us. I think he's one of these players that suffered from the Russell Martin school of overcoaching, where, and I've went back to this point in previous pods. There was an interview with Will Still when he was down at Southampton just a few weeks ago, and it's the players that were under Russell Martin seem to have had all the freedom, creativity, and train of thought sucked out of them under his training. Hopefully, because Martin wasn't here for as long to do such long-term damage to us. I think Asgard's one of these players that, where Bajrami needs a cuddle and told everything's all right and a wee kiss in the cheek, Asgard's probably one that needs a toe up the backside and told, right, you're better than how you're playing, get a grip of yourself, because right now your shirt's up for grabs and you've only been here for 4 months. If he's got a set between his legs, he takes that on board and he says, do you know what, do I want to get papped away from Rangers 6 months to a year after signing and be branded a failure in European football? Because that's the legacy that he currently stands to have. Whereas if he gets his act together and plays the way that he can, and we've seen it, he's a big physical lad, he's got a good touch, he's got a good set of feet on him, and he can work well in a confined space. I think he just needs to, I genuinely think sometimes he needs to get out his own way, stop overthinking what you're about to do and just bloody do it. Worst case scenario, you're going to have 50,000 people that call you a FUD for passing the wrong way. That's fine. You take that one in the chin because you make sure that the next pass that you play that you're not going to get called one again.
Yeah, agreed. Honestly, he's one that I'm struggling with at the moment. Stevie, have you seen glimpses of Asgard enough to think he's somebody who can turn it around? Or, as Juicy Bear has said, has Martin done too much damage to this player in this club, do you think?
Oh, Martin definitely done a lot of damage. He tried to micromanage so many players and it never worked. It just, it put them in I don't know, Asgard's a good example. Whenever you watch him sometimes you think he's got his feet in concrete. He's almost strange because you mentioned you mentioned Bajrami before. You've got Bajrami, Asgard, Raskin, 3 players who excel for their international teams. And they come back to Rangers and it's just, I know Raskin's had good games, but overall this season he's been much poorer than he was last season. So that's a trend. That's a worrying trend right there. Why they doing it for the country but not for Rangers? But I suppose it's been a very unsettled and a season of upheaval. So maybe once things settle down, they'll improve. But Asgard sometimes looks too much like a Luton player to me. I'm no doubting he's got talent. Mitch has pointed out there. His goal against was it Kilmarnock? I can't remember. He scored an absolute blinder. But it was like the shackles were off, and he just seemed to forget about where he was. It was like, I'm just playing football. So it's definitely talent. And as Mitch says, he's a big physical unit. I think he's got all the attributes to be a good player in the Scottish Premiership, but he's not doing it for us. And to be honest, right now, if I had a choice between Lyle Cameron playing that midfield role and Asgard, I'm picking Cameron 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100. I think he gives you far more energy. He's far more dynamic, goals, assists, and he's what Rangers need. So Asgard should be looking at Cameron. But as Billy pointed out before, consecutive managers, we're not picking these guys, so obviously they're seeing things that we're not. But from our perspective, when Cameron played, he was like a pure buzzball. He was everywhere. And Asgard has got to kind of replicate that. It's just remove the shackles and just go for it. Play for Rangers. Like that goal against Kilmarnock. Do that every week or try and do that every week. Have a portfolio outside the box. Be more aggressive. Be more dynamic. The jury's firmly out, mate. We'll see. 50-50 on him.
Absolutely. Billy, is Asgard one of these players who's come to Scottish football thinking it's a walk in the park, and he's found out very quickly that it's not that at all, and maybe actually he's not suited to it? Or is it the Russell Martin effect that's still lingering there, and he's not got that? He's not let those shackles go from that situation. What would your take be on that one?
I think at the moment he's Schrodinger's attacking player. I don't think we know what we've got. What I would say that this is I'm going to qualify this. This is proper old school, throwback stuff. And I'm someone who doesn't love it when Maurice Ross is on our TV banging on about players wearing gloves and not liking that sort of thing, because it's modern football and players are different. However, I think if you're a player who opposition and fans look at and go, how long did your hair take? 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours? You better be able to produce. All players are into their grooming, but I mean that hair is a work of art. And if you're going to start onto the park looking like that, you kind of have to back it up. And again, fully qualified. These are my views, not the views of the Rangers Journal. However, it's coming to an interesting stage with Asgard, because I think, like a lot of the players, he was one of Russell Martin's guys. Russell Martin talked a lot about Tello Asgard when he came in, and I think it's safe to assume that on the basis of that, he's had more input from Russell Martin than most folk. And I tend to think of I think I've used the analogy before, but looking at this squad, post Russell Martin is like deprogramming cult members. You're actually going to have to take out some of the nonsense he's put in their head. What we don't know with Tello Asgard is it's that thing Stevie was talking about. When he plays off the cuff on pure instinct, like that goal he scored, he turns two guys inside out. I mean, that was actually almost like a scooped shot, but because of his physicality and he's leaning back like a lever, he actually puts it in like a rocket. You look at that and you go, we can unlock that on a regular basis. What a player. The question I've got is, once we get the Russell Martin effect out of the road, and I think he was awfully unlucky in the Old Firm game, I think in some ways you could say Ralston's been brave and bought a red card there, because what he's doing, throwing his junk into that position there to try and win the ball, I have got no idea. But Asgard was like, he was trying something, he was playing on instinct. Question is he going to be a player that can unlock that? How many players have we seen down the years where you get these flashes when they play on pure instinct, they look like a world beater, but they don't do it often enough? And I think we're coming into that phase where it's going to be interesting to see if Danny Röhl can unlock that from Asgard, because he's got the physical attributes. He's shown in flashes what he can do. The big question is he a player that, like Stevie was saying, can he get out of his head? Can he actually just play? Can he take the ball and instead of take the ball and think for half a second, can he take the ball and just rely on the fact that he's been playing football for 20 years and his body and his kind of mind will know what to do once he gets moving with it? So there isn't an answer at the moment. And he is one of those, it's difficult because there is the evidence of how he does in international football. He scored those 4 goals, but when you actually see them, it was like right place, right time. They weren't the kind of the worldies that he scored for Rangers. He was at Luton, so he's played at a level where it's not as high. He's got an adjustment to make. He's coming to a higher level, a bigger club, a weird little league where people run about like trying to half you the whole time. So he's got an adjustment to make. He's had a crap manager who's filled his head with who knows what. I honestly think we have to give him the rest of the season to see if we can unlock this, because he's had so much to contend with. It wouldn't surprise me either way. If it turns out we've got a gem, brilliant. If it turns out he's another one of these, you can see it, but and that's what it's going to be. In a couple of years' time, he's either going to be at Rangers or getting sold for a pile of money, or he's going to be one of those players that bounces about and managers look at and think, oh, I'll be the one, I can be the one to unlock that talent, but nobody ever really does. And I'm hoping it's the former, because, like I say, if you've been under Russell Martin and you're one of Russell Martin's key signings and you've had all that special input, you probably have got a wee bit of recovery to do. So I'm hoping that post the international break, getting all the nonsense with the red card out the road, we actually see him motor on. And if he does, I mean, he reminds me a wee bit of in terms of physicality. It probably won't make sense to most people, but it reminds me a wee bit of a Ted McMinn. If we could unlock that big sort of character, sets off on pure instinct and capable of anything, and if he can harness that to a wee bit more thought, great player we could have. But like I say, Schrodinger's attacking midfielder at the moment.
I'm struggling with him, Billy. I'm not going to lie. I've tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I've tried to look and see this boy's going to come good. I just can't see it. At the moment, I can't see it. Saying that, he'll end up winning the goal of the season for that goal he scored against Dundee United. So that will end up happening. And he'll end up getting sold. I think one of the comments from Blue is, we wonder if he'll Asgard Barano will be punted in January, free up some funds. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. I wouldn't be surprised if those two maybe are the ones who end up do get punted. But look, we'll see what the situation is there. Conscious there's lots of questions coming in, there's lots of comments. So I'm just going to fire through, and then if we've got time at the end, we can have a quick discussion about some other things. Mitch, come to you first, then Stevie next on this one. This one is another really interesting one. This has come from Curry Muncher. Why is Ant-Man's performance been so dire? Top assist and passing accuracy. Taking men on now, consistently coming inside, even under Röhl, still the same. This one really baffles me, Mitch, because I looked at this guy's stats a few weeks ago, and he was a top assistant in the Eredivisie last season, I believe. He came to Rangers in that first game. I said to my boy in that first game, he done a run from left-hand side of the park to the right-hand side of the park in the first game against Victoria Pilsen, I think it was. And I said to my boy, we've got a player in our hands here. I think he'll be absolutely superb. 24 hours later, one more game later, if you look at it, he's turned into a nobody, and he's really disappointed, I think, over the last few games. I would probably question, even under Rowe, he's still the same. I don't think he's had an opportunity under Rowe, is my own honest view on that one. But, Mitch, what's your take on that, man? What has gone wrong from his first game to now? Is he still settling in? Is it the Russell Martin effect? Is it the phase of the moon? What do you think it is, Mitch?
I'm going to give you a number. 14. The number of chances created by Oliver Antman since the start of the season. 14. That's not an Oliver Antman problem. It's a striking department problem. That 40 of those 14 chances, only 3 of them have ended up in the back of the net. That's not an Oliver Antman problem. That's the problem of the striking team. And that doesn't matter which variation of the strikers that we look at. Collectively, as a unit, the striking team have not done enough to bury the chances provided to them. 17 chances provided by James Tavernier and 13 chances or 14 chances by Antman on top of that. Look at the goal tally for the strikers for the season. It's disgusting. And there's no other word to use really other than disgusting. The return for the chances. Oliver Antman, I think, as well, there's a really, really weird thing with Antman as well, where Antman was out the team for the final 3 games, like up to Dundee, because he was not well. He had the flu. Danny Rowe covered that with everybody. It wasn't that he was dropped or any big weird suspicion. The guy was unwell with the flu. I'm not being funny. I don't want Captain Lurgy infecting the rest of the team while I'm on a run of 5 games in 3 weeks. Keep yourself at home before you start making everybody else sick, which is the right thing to do. I think as well, though, if you are a out-and-out chalk-in-your-boots winger that Antman is, the current system that we've played the last couple of games doesn't necessarily work for an out-and-out winger. If you are just a raw, get the chalk in your boots and run past your man, which is what Antman does, he's got pace to burn. I would actually probably say if you put him on 100 metre dash, he's probably quicker than Gassama over 100 metres. But the way that we play doesn't really support that right now. And I think we've played in a way that Danny Rose just tried to keep the shop clean pretty much, to say, shore up the back and we will make a chance or 2 at the front and we'll bury one of them. But Antman for me isn't the problem. I think the big problem is, one, down the right hand side, him and Tav, I think, are almost too similar to each other. And Tav and Tierney worked really, really well last season, because they almost went like, I can describe it as lever and arch. One went forward, one went back. The other one went forward, the other one dropped back to cover them. So they were always covering each other's arses pretty much. Antman's not got it in him. He is not a defensive-minded winger. He is an attack-minded winger. He's only going to be either on the halfway line, out the wing, or in the final third. That's where he's interested in being. So keep your right back. That's why, actually, when you watch the games where he's played with Aarons, he plays much better, because Aarons isn't offensively minded. Aarons is much more traditional, I'll stick to my defensive work. So I think Antman's not the problem. I think there's a lot more to come, but there's also been a huge amount of wastage from the striking department on 14 big opportunities created that's resulted in a conversion rate of 2 or 3 goals. That's obscene from the striking department.
Yeah. Stevie, just to touch on some of the things Mitch was saying about Antman there. Obviously, he's talking about the number of chances created that's not been taken. I want to come on to talk about Miovski in a wee second with Billy and the rest of these in a wee minute. But Antman, Miovski, they're your type of combination you'd have probably thought. You get Antman on the side to get those balls across, Miovski's going to bury them all day long, right? That's what you're thinking, especially when we've seen Miovski do previously, right? But for me, I don't see Ant-Man hitting that byline now. What I see Ant-Man doing every time he gets the balls cutting inside, for whatever reason, is this something that's getting coached out of him because it's not the way Rangers play? Or has he lost all confidence where he's not willing to get to that byline anymore and get the ball in like he was doing over in the Eredivisie last season? What do you think is causing the fans to take that step and say he's not hitting in all cylinders at the moment?
I think it's all of the above, mate. I mean, pretty much all the reasons you've just listed. It's a combination of factors. Like I keep saying, the upheaval and the kind of general shambles that Rangers have been this season. It's not a great place to kind of go and play your football. So I think that's definitely had an impact. Like yourself, his first game, we were all like, wow, what a player this guy. Like an old-fashioned, like you say, really dangerous winger who's going to get assists. But as much as covered there, he still created 14 chances. Somebody in the comments was saying there, just kind of took the words out of my mouth. They were saying, could he play like a right wing back? But to me, no, because then he's 30, 40 yards too far back. You know what I mean? He needs to be starting off in the middle of the park and going at defence and going at like fullbacks. Still definitely a player there, but again, as much as covered, 5-3-2 or 3-5-2, he can't play that. You know, that's not a formation he can play. So, you know, there's just a lot going again. But ultimately, I think he's one that with more coaching and more consistency for Danny Röhl, I think he will come good. And the good thing about Röhl is he changes formation. You know, it's not like he's stuck to like 5-3-2, 3-5-2 every week. He will go 4-4-2 or 4-3-2-1. So yeah, he'll definitely get a chance, and he's another really good player in the books. I think towards the end of the season, you know, as the season progresses, he will come back onto a game. I've got no doubts about that.
I hope you're right, Stevie. I like him as a player. I think he's the type of player that Rangers could use. Whether it's a 4-4-2, 4-3-3, he's the type of player who would, for me, excel in that, especially that 4-3-3. I think he did that in the Eredivisie. That was the formation they played mostly, was the 4-3-3. Played off that right-hand side and he got the assist from it. And they obviously had a striker competent enough to put it in the back of the net. So just coming on to that one, Billy, in terms of competent strikers, we know we've had our challenges with Chermiti and the money we've spent on that one. One of the points, it's not mostly a question, it's a point that Blueberry's put on that I wanted to touch upon, which was Aberdeen paid 600k for Miovski, who was at the time a relative unknown. We've paid, we believe, anywhere in the region of between 2.5 to 3.5, I think, is the rumoured fee. We don't really know in terms of what the number is. Blue feels we've been mugged for that, for Miovski. What's your take on Miovski overall? And is the out with Miovski, do you think we'll get anything at Rangers at the moment who can turn around and say that starting position should be mine on a weekly basis?
Well, just very quickly before going on to Miovski, the one question I've got about Ant-Man is, I'm hoping this isn't the case, but the thing that keeps niggling at me is Sam Lammers. Is there an issue about players who do well in the Eredivisie struggling with the style of Scottish football? And that's what we're going to find out in the next couple of months, because Sam Lammers averaged a goal every 2 games in the Eredivisie and a goal every 10 games in 3 other countries. So I'm hoping that the Ant-Man we saw in the game against Pilsen, who did hit the byline and made that goal, is the guy we see going forward. Miovski, I think there's a danger of maybe people rewriting history a wee bit. Miovski looked good when he was in Scotland. His highlight reel's quite something in terms of, like, you know, the range of finishes. And he ragdolled Connor Goldson, which, you know, Pete Goldson maybe was slightly past peak, but it was still not an easy thing to do. I think that's one of the, whether it works out or not, I don't think there were many people saying that was a bad move. He'd looked good in Scotland. He proved he could score in Scotland. He'd had a bad season in Spain. And, you know, that can happen. He's a guy who's coming back. For all we know, it's getting his confidence back. You know, he's come in, you know, he's come into a team that's struggling. He's come into a team that doesn't have an identity, that a manager who, you know, hasn't had a team that knew how to create chances. So I think there's a danger of maybe jumping the gun on Miovski a wee bit. I wonder if he's a wee bit more of a confidence player than we maybe realised, because with strikers very often you get that first goal and you go on a run. He got the goal and didn't go on a run, but I think coming in when the season started after a bad season before, it's possible the seasons that got him the move from Aberdeen were his peak. and we've bought him in decline. But I think he's of an age where we'd be silly to give up on him. I really hope he comes good. I hope we get to see the striker that we saw at Aberdeen. But it just keeps going back to, I will actually now agree with Mitch a wee bit. I think both of us were kind of like founding members of the old Blue Eyes RSC. And we said when Dessers was going, if you're going to ship 40, 60 goals out the team, you cannot bring in two guys who in the last season scored something like 4 goals between them and then be surprised when we're struggling for goals, which kind of circles back to what Mitch was saying about chance creation. So I think let's maybe give Miovski a hard time when we're creating lots of chances and he's missing them, rather than just now when he's trying to bed in and we're still trying to find an identity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Bill, I look at Miovski when he came in and he played his first game against Celtic. He thrown in from the start for us, and I liked the way he hustled and bustled up top. I really liked it. I thought this guy could really do something for us. That first game, probably the most boringest Old Firm game you'll see, but I did think he'd done really well. He was running in behind. I think there was a chance at the start where he was down, Liam Scales took him down, and it was a contentious question whether it was a penalty or not. I'll always say penalty, some people said not, but I thought he'd done really well in that game, but I just don't know if we've seen him hit the heights. Even when he scored against Falkirk away, I thought maybe that will be him going on a run. We've not seen that yet. So I'm the same as you, Billy. I hope we get to see it more from him, because I like Miovski. I think he's a really good player, and I think he'd be somebody who could really hit the heights for us. I think the challenge we've got just now, isn't it, is that we've really got a really poor striking division at the moment, where you've got him, you've got Chermiti, you've got Danilo. We've not really got much else up there at the moment. That's the challenge, and it's where it's going to be. It's interesting in the next few weeks and months. On that one, I want to stick with the striker position at the moment for Mitch, and then Stevie, I'll come to yourself on this one in a second of all. We're about 7 weeks away from the transfer window opening up. I'll pose the question to Mitch, you first, and then Stevie will come to yourself in this one, right? What do you want to see happening between now and that transfer window closing? Because we know it's a long month, and January will be a long month with it, and there'll be lots of movement left, right, and centre with it. What do Rangers need? How do we get over this? Because I think it's one of the most important transfer windows we're going to have in a long while, and we know January's not great. So on that, Mitch, what expectations can we get from this transfer window, do you think, Mitch?
I think from the transfer window, right now, we need a left back, at least one experienced left back. Now, doesn't need to be a big sexy signing, doesn't need to be somebody that costs, 6, 7, whatever £million, just somebody solid. Bring in somebody who's 28, 29-year-old. They're probably coming for 2.5 year deal. Doesn't need to be on mega money. They're just going to come in and do a job. Like, no thrills, just they're going to be competent at their job, because one of the biggest things that this team's screaming for at the moment is it's a talented young team, and you see it during periods of games. The team, some of the young players are looking around for other people to tell them what to do, and it's that senior in-game management that some of them really, really lack. So I think for me, we need a left back, we need a couple of experienced heads in there, and we need a striker. And because for me, Chermiti's playing like a striker who's weighed down by the fee that's been paid for him. Yeah. And I think it's because everywhere he goes in Scotland, he's constantly been reminded, you were £8 million. Mm-hmm. And you tell a player so often that you're not worth that kind of money, then they start to believe it themselves. And I think there is also a huge element of psychology with this team, which I know that Sasha that's came in with Danny Rowe, his background is sports psychology, and you can probably start to see some of the early embers of his impact, obviously, on the team. But I think there's quite a few more players that need either a curl or a kick in the backside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agree, Mitch. Stevie, just in terms of what Mitch was talking about there, one of the things that I really liked, the things he touched on, was experienced head and maybe having that experienced head coming in the January. We don't seem to have that at the moment. Okay, we've got Tav and you've got Suter, right? But people will argue the experience of that is because they've been here and people are classing those guys as not being very successful. We brought Joe Rothwell in because everyone said he was the experienced guy. He's the guy that's going to hold that middle together. We've hardly seen Rothwell under Danny Rule. I think Rothwell maybe be someone who might get put out low or something like that happening maybe in January with him. What type of experience do you think Rangers need going forward, Stevie? And that's not just in the January window, but going forward is it we need to change the tactics and go back to that older heads throughout the team? Or are we thinking we just maybe need one or two of the team just to try and get the guys over the line when they go and get stuff? What's your thoughts on that one, mate?
We're talking like dreams or reality, because Christmas is 6 weeks from now, and we'll only make a Christmas miracle. When we go to Tynecastle on the 21st of December, hopefully we can beat them and agree a deal for Lawrence Shankland, because I've not gave up on him. To me, he's the guy that Rangers really need. We needed him 2 years ago, we needed him a year ago, and I still think we need him. He's a proven striker, he's a Scotland international, he's a leader. That's what Rangers need. Chermiti, hopefully he leaves on loan. I'll never be convinced by the guy. He's not a Rangers striker. But it comes back to Thelwell and Stewart. If Thelwell's still in charge of signings, it's bleak. It really is. He cannot be trusted, as you've said before. That Graham Souness said, do not give that guy any more power to sign players, because who knows what we'll end up with. Even you mentioned there, John Suter. To me, John Suter's never a leader. I don't think he's a leader at all. Semi-final where he ducked it the way McGregor shot was a perfect example. A Sasa Papac or a John Brown or pretty much any defender for a successful Rangers team, they would have put their face right in the way of that and took it and got knocked out. If his contract is up, maybe he's another one that should be looking at shipping out. But definitely left back Rothwell, I'm sure he'll go. I see no future for him at Rangers. Left back, striker, maybe another midfielder, possibly another defender, because we're going to be light at the start of next season. We need to start planning for. Obviously, we need to do as well as we can this season, but we need to have one eye on next season. But again, it comes back to Thelwell. If he's there, I don't think it gives anybody any confidence. So as much as we're enthused and optimistic with Danny Rule, there's this black cloud of impending doom in the back of our minds that Thelwell's still there.
Yeah. I think that's everyone's issue, isn't it, Steve? Is the fact that he's still the guy that's probably making those decisions. And I think that him and Stewart, for me, are probably those last remaining black clouds at the moment. If they were to move on, I think a lot of Rangers fans could buy into what comes next. But with him at the helm still, that's where your stopgap's going to be, because I don't think the fans are going to buy into that. So that, for me, is the really interesting one, is what does Kavanagh and co do with those guys? And it'll be interesting to see how the next couple of weeks come with that. Billy, I just want to bring up a comment. The reason I bring this one up is for two reasons. Chaz, I believe, has put some money into the page, so thank you for that, Chaz. With the donation, we really greatly appreciate it. But I'm also bringing it up because Chaz has said, Ted McMinn, you're having a laugh, more skill, and we told Ted. So that's in response to some of the comments you were making about Ted McMinn. I'm going to give you a right of reply on that one, Billy, if you want.
I would not challenge that at all. At the moment, I would take Ted McMinn's big toe for definite. Peak Ted McMinn's big toe. Famously, it's almost a cliche now, Ted McMinn, by his own admission, when he headed off on a run, didn't know where he was going half the time. But that's, there's another way. We used to laugh at that. We used to kind of, almost have a joke that, Ted McMinn was this big undisciplined player. That's also the kind of, it's a very Scottish thing. In continental football, or South American football, they would celebrate someone like that who was instinctive and intuitive and is doing things before he's even thought about it. And I think, I've got to be honest, I think in modern football, the chaos factor is underestimated a little bit. It's I'm not saying you just lump big, passes into the box and you rattle the ball about, but I think things are so set up and so regimented. There are times where you're watching games and you're going, I know where the ball's going in 5 passes. The opposition knows where the ball's going in 5 passes. For goodness sake, do something different. And it's amazing when you actually see someone take a free kick where he shouldn't be shooting from a tight angle or rattling the ball in and it pinballs about. You can see players like default. I don't. What do we do now? So like Ted McMinn, yeah, I am not saying can't. I'm not saying. I almost said Cantwell there. There's a Freudian slip. I'm not saying. I'm not saying Asgard is Ted McMinn Mark II. I'm just saying, like, if he could unlock that side, because at the moment he looks, for want of a better term, like a constipated player. He looks like someone who gets the ball and there's a pause. And we've seen what he can do when he gets the ball, gets his head down and just trusts. His physicality alone should be brushing players out the road. And so I think if he can grow into the player at Rangers he could be, what a player would have. But I'm not, if you were asking me, would I have like Pete Ted McMinn inside instead? Absolutely, every day of the week.
Absolutely.
I'll come back really quickly.
Of course you can, Steve.
Just really quickly, just to Sam Billy said there about the chaos. Sunderland this season, they're like a throwback. I've watched them a few times. They're so inventive and physical. They're like something for the 1990s Premier League. They're just inventive free kicks. They're really like trying new things, but like with that kind of basis in what was like successful before. I'd love to see Rangers kind of adopt some of that because it really makes a difference because they're unpredictable.
Absolutely. Stevie, I would love to agree with you, but I've got a lot of colleagues who are from Newcastle and big Newcastle fans. So if I agree with you in this one, I'll probably lose my job tomorrow. So I'm not doing that. So I'll let you have that point, Stevie. And
I'll tell you a really quick funny story. I heard the Sunderland fan on 5 Live last week, right? And they said to him, everyone's going great, blah, blah, blah. You're looking forward to playing Newcastle in the tiny weird derby. The Sunderland play better football than Newcastle. And the guy responded, he says there's 19 teams in the Premier League that play better football than Newcastle.
We are a podcast that's open to Sunderland and Newcastle fans, so we try not to go against either, but love it, Stevie. Brilliant. Look, I'm conscious, guys, we've been on just over an hour. It's flown by. The questions have been fantastic. I've got a couple more questions I think we just need to fire through really quickly if you guys are okay with it. First one, I'm going to come to yourself, Mitch, with would you sign Josh Doig? This came from Sir Blue. Josh Doig is currently, I believe, it's Sassuolo in the Serie A. 10 games he's played this season. No goals, no assists. Is he a player that Rangers should have been signing, do you think, Mitch?
It's a hard one. I think we've got a tendency to glorify players that are Scottish that we didn't sign.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think as well when you're playing for a side like Sassuolo as well, you're never going to be a front foot player when you're playing for them in Serie A, versus the vast majority of the league, just nature of the beast. Doig, would I take him? Yes. Do I think we should shell out the money that they'll probably shout for him? No. But also, can I just say big up to Chaz for putting in 2 super chat comments there, and rightfully giving Billy it tight for his Ted McMinn comments.
Absolutely. Next question I've got, and I'm just conscious of time, guys, so I'm just wanting to fire through this. This comes from our own Doug, who's put a question, and I'll start this off by saying I'm not a big fan of looking back at the way in terms of players that were here and who do we bring back or who do we add to the current squad. But Stevie, I'm going to put this one to you. Doug has asked, you have to bring back either Jeff Day, Proper, McCausland or Hadji and Jagney. Who would you add to the current squad out of those players that he's put on them?
Jeff Day. Probably. I loved Hadji as well, but to be fair, we're in such desperate need of left back, and I think Jeff Day would be brilliant in a 5-3-2, 3-5-2. I think he's a perfect wing back. Physically, I know he was very inconsistent, but you look at him physically, he's all the optics to be a great wing back, up and down, great engine. So Jeff Day for me.
I'm just glad you never said Robin Proper there, because if he did, I think Mitch was coming right through the screen to get you at the same time. So
I
was a proper man last year.
Doug is definitely at it.
Absolutely. Billy, what's your thoughts on that one? Who would you bring out of those four? Well,
it's kind of like asking someone who doesn't like Marmite what kind of bread they want their Marmite sandwich on. I think weirdly, honestly, probably if we were still live in Europe, and I'm kind of waiting for the internet to explode, if we were still live in Europe proper, the rest of them proved that they don't really do a job for us. Proper could do a job in Europe. At least he could do a job in Europe. I suspect if we'd had him for the European games this season, I'm not saying we'd have more points. I think we'd have had better results. So, Hadji's always been like one element short of being a really good player. And if he had that element, that explosiveness or speed, he would never have been at Rangers. So it's catch-22. So my Marmite sandwich is Robin Proper on wholemeal, please.
I'm just waiting for the comments to start exploding here. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting for people to cut us off after that comment. Mitch, I know you were a Robin Proper man at certain points. Are you backing that one from Billy, or are you saying someone else in that? Bear in mind, Hadji scored an absolute worldie last weekend from the 35 yards top corner. I've never seen him take a shot like that for Rangers before, so I don't know where they get that from. But would it be Hadji, or is it another one for you, Mitch?
See your Hadji, James. Here's my wee balloon. Pop. If Hadji was half the player he thinks he is, he would be at a bigger club than what he is when he was available for free. You know, and Hadji's biggest problem is when he had the injury, he lost what little pace that he had, which, you know, he didn't have a huge amount to lose in the beginning. But he's also a very, very inconsistent player. He can't, you know, he doesn't play the same type of game 5-6 games in a row. You know, he's not one of these players that you look at and go, I'm going to get a solid 6.5 out of you the day with hail, rain or shine. Sometimes it was all sugar or all watery, shall we say. For me, it would be Robin Proper, and statistically, and I don't care whatever abuse I take in the comments for it, Proper is still better than Fernandez and Jigger at the back. Right now, Robin Proper walks into this team quite easily.
I honestly would love to know what you guys have been on tonight. I really would, because I honestly don't know what Robin
He was about to have an aneurysm.
No wonder. I just not for me, Robin Proper.
I think they're winding us up, Chris. I think they're winding us up.
I think
you up
they're trying to go
enough.
for another hour. I think that's what it is, Stevie. They want to go for another hour here, so mental. Guys, final question we've got, and this is we'll end it now. A really fun question. This has come in from Curry Muncher, so thank you, Curry Muncher, for your question. The question is, and I'll go round the houses on this, start with yourself, Stevie. What Rangers player would you get as a tattoo? And no, Mitch, you can't have the whole team on your left removed. So, Stevie, what Rangers player would you get if you had to get a tattoo? Have you already got a Rangers player as a tattoo? There's a question as well for you. What's your thoughts on that one, Mitch?
Don't pull your public,
no tattoos, mate. No, I've never done it. But if I had to get a Rangers one, I'd get two. I'd get David Cooper on this and Brian Laudrup on that.
Amazing. Honestly, fantastic. Two incredible players, and absolute top-notch choice, Stevie. I love it. Absolutely love it. Billy, what about yourself? Tattoo man? Have you got any Rangers players, or would you get one if you had to?
No, I'm untattooed. I'm the only one in my family actually that isn't big into the skin art. I think for me, being old school, I'm just thinking of we're not going for current players. So honestly, I struggle to see past John Gregg with the mutton chop, the sideburns, the sunglasses, the Cup Winners' Cup. You know, that sort of classic. John Gregg basically looking like the coolest man in the 1970s, which was a very cool decade. So I think that full back tattoo and the shirts off all summer.
Amazing. Love it. Absolutely love it. Mitch, I'm scared to even ask this.
Stefan Kloss for me. Stefan Kloss.
There's a shout.
Now, Stefan Kloss for me was the first Rangers player that I looked at and absolutely idolised as a wee boy. Mm-hmm. And it was the big saves from the big moments where you just looked at. Now, bear in mind when Kloss was playing, now for the rest of the choir, I do not want you to feel old, so I'm prefacing this. But when I looked at, when you looked at Stefan Kloss, he was like a wall for a wee guy at the back. Like he was like this big monster in goal that just kept everything out. And when you're a wee guy, you're like, this guy's my hero. You're like, he's keeping balls out the net, and he does it all with a smile on his face and a bit of anger in his voice. So Kloss for me all day long.
What a shout. I think, look, some of those answers have been tremendous. And I think the question from Curry Muncher was spot on. One of the best questions I've seen in a long time in that one. Look, I'm going to play a bit of a cheat code in this one, if you don't mind. I'm not going to go with a player. I'm going to go with manager, and for me, Walter Smith. I would get Walter Smith. So I would. When I was a kid, it was all Rangers winning everything, and I look at Walter Smith, and he epitomises everything for me about Rangers. So he would be the one for me. If I was to get a tattoo, Walter Smith would be the one, because he was the guy growing up, and you look at him and you say he's Rangers, he's Mr. Rangers for me, just because of that idle time and where it was and stuff like that. So it's maybe I'm a tattoo man. I've not got anything Rangers just now, and I don't have any Rangers tattoos. But if I was to get something in Curry Munchen, might be just costing me a fortune, because it's something I might think about and see if I can get a wee Walter Smith tattoo somewhere. Don't know if my wife will like it enough, but look, it's Rangers. We've all got our other love, haven't we? So
be careful where you get it, because she might be looking at Walter.
Absolutely. No, listen, guys, what a question that is. That's brilliant, and really some fantastic answers there. I just want to say, guys, thank you. I know we've had some super chats from Chaz and the comments and the money's put on, so thank you for that. Really appreciate it. The comments I'm trying not to be unprofessional here, lads, because you're looking at the comments and I'm laughing at some of the comments that are coming in. It's fantastic, it really is, and the interaction on tonight's show has been brilliant from everyone. So I need to just say thank you, folks, for all the comments you've been putting in, all the questions you put across the guys this evening. It's great to be back on the Thursday night, and it's been absolutely fantastic seeing some of those comments coming through. Ted McMinn one, that was brilliant, Billy. I love that. I love going old school in these nights and just talking about the old players and stuff. So we need more of that, I think, in these pods, guys. We really do. Gents, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've been on just over 75 minutes now. I don't know if we can keep it going much longer. Billy, thank you for input. Thank you for taking this old school. It's great to be on with you again, and we hope to see you again soon, mate.
Oh, it's been fun. Thanks for having us on, Chris.
Stevie, thank you, mate. I know you're having some connection problems. I hope you can hear us okay, mate, and everything's all right. But again, thanks for all your input, mate. It is absolutely spot on, pal.
Thanks, Chris, Billy and Mitch. It's been fun, and yeah, always a pleasure. Never a chore. Cheers, boys.
Mitch, as always, you like to have a grand entrance. I'm going to give you the grand exit, mate. What's your final thoughts on tonight's show, Mitch? Over to you, pal.
I'm glad that I've not given Stevie his weekly aneurysm this week, so I'm glad that he's still in one piece. I will say I'm disappointed in our Billy. Once again, he's rocked up in a plain bloody t-shirt, when really, Billy, I expected better. I'm upsetting you.
Oh, this is there's a reference, or that's not what it looks like. There's a reference for you. See if anyone can work out what book or film that's from. There's your kind of quiz question.
The winner gets Billy's eternal gratitude.
And a once worn Noel Edmonds shirt. You can have that as well while you're at it.
Signed, don't forget, signed.
Obviously, by me, not Noel Edmonds.
Tremendous. Mitch, thank you as always, mate. It's been a pleasure. It really has. Look, finally, ladies and gents, thank you for you guys. Without you tuning in, we don't do this show. It's as simple as that, and you are the most important people. I hope you've had fun tonight. I hope we've been able to answer most of your questions that are there. It's not great having no Rangers games midweek, but there's a lot going on at our football club. I think there's a lot of optimism around the club still. There's still a lot to play for between now and the end of the season. Let's see what comes next, guys, I think is the point, and let's see what old Danny's got under his hat to help us move forward and see if we can get our Rangers back again. Like, regardless of what happens, folks, just remember, lots of content on the channel. There's been lots of content this week, still lots of content to come. And just remember, folks, every night is the Rangers Journal night. Good night.
Every night is the Rangers Journal night.